Hello, my name is LoG and welcome to part 2 of my minor arpeggio power-up. Let's get started. Okay, so just to recap what we did in part 1 is we learned all of those little arpeggio shapes, those small chord shapes descending, and we were playing like this. We were adding in that extra high note for some of them, but not the first one, so that would be like this. That's what we were doing in part 1. Part 2, we're going to do literally the same thing, except just ascending, right? We're going to go this way instead of that way. So we ended right here. That note that we ended on in part 1 is going to be the beginning of part 2. So it's going to look like this. I'm also making sure I start there with my pinky to set up the next shape as we ascend. So first of all, musically, the shapes are exactly the same, except we're just going up instead of down. So this one, we came down like this. Right, that's flat 7, 5, flat 3, 1. We're just going to go up now. So 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. It's exactly the same. Same thing for the next one, right? We were coming down like this. 2, 1, 5, flat 3. We're just going to go up now. Flat 3, 5, 1, 2. It's exactly the same. The next one right here would be the 4, flat 3, 1, 5. For this one, we're just going up. 5, 1, flat 3, 4. And then for the last one, for part 1, we were just coming down 3 notes like this. But for this one, considering we're going up, we're actually going to go up 1, flat 3, 5, and then add in the flat 7 right there to keep it a 4-note grouping. And then the next note, bam, we're back to that 5, and then we do the entire thing over again, coming down like that. So let me play it a couple times without talking. You can see what I mean. So I'm starting right here. So here we go. First one, second one, third one, last one. So that's really easy. It's the same exact thing every time. It's just a 4-note group. Up the arpeggio, add an extra note. 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 And then you restart. That's all it is. So musically, it's really simple. Of course, just like in part 1, we're going to do it twice on D minor, once on F sharp minor, once on E minor. Exactly the same as what we did for part 1, except for this part, we're just going to work on the ascent. So it'll sound like this. We work up the shape exactly how we came down, just opposite. There's the first one, next, next, next. And we're going to sit there and hold. And then we're going to do it again. Sit there and hold. Then we're going to go up here and do it once here. Hold. Then we're going to go back a whole step, do it once there. And then go back to the beginning, do the whole thing. So again, what is that shape? It's the same little arpeggio, same exact thing we were doing on the descent, except we're just going back this way. So we start with 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, then flat 3, 5, 1, 2, then 5, 1, flat 3, 4, and then 1, 3, 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. It's the same exact thing. The only real difference is that extra little flat 7 we're adding up top, because in part 1, we didn't add an extra note to that first one. We just came down the 3. But for this one, to restart the whole thing, to keep it nice and clean in 4/4, we're adding in this extra top note, just like that. Okay, really, really simple. All the added notes are exactly the same. There's really nothing different other than how we're playing it. So let's talk about what we're doing here with the right hand. This is where using pick and fingers is coming into play. Do you have to do that? No, you can actually do economy picking this way, ascending, if that makes sense to you. That will be a downstroke that handles all 3 strings, like that. Now, I'm not going to lie, I suck at this, so I'm not going to do that. That's why I do pick and fingers. It's a lot easier for me. But if you want to do something like this, you can. You can tell that I'm terrible at it because it sounds terrible. So if you want to do that, by all means, practice it like that. It's, it's totally cool. For me, though, I will be doing pick and fingers, and this is what I'm doing. It's really, really simple. I'm going to pick the first note. Middle finger takes care of the next note, which is the A string in this case. Ring finger takes care of the next note, which is the D string in this case. And then I just hammer on. That's the shape. So you can see my hand when it's working like that. Pick, finger, finger, hammer on. Pick, finger, finger, hammer on. Right? It flows really well. In my opinion, I can get it way more comfortable and way more kind of in my hands and mindless than trying to do the economy picking kind of sweeping downward. That's just never come natural for me, at least. So the pick and fingers really makes a difference for me. So again, what am I doing? Pick, middle finger, ring finger, hammer on. So really important when I'm doing this, watch my hand as I'm kind of working up, going through all the shapes. So watch my right hand here. Don't care about my left hand. Watch this hand. So watch this. Again. So you'll notice that when I am doing that hammer on to finish up the shape, my right hand is actually prepping the next set of strings. Because if you think about what I'm actually doing here, I'm playing these three strings, the thick strings, the E, A, D, so E, A, D. Then I'm playing the next set of three strings, A, D, G. Then I'm playing the next set of three strings, the D, G, B, and then the final set of three strings, G, B, E. So you'll notice when I'm doing that hammer on, I'm already prepping my hand to move down instead of moving at the last minute. You see my pick right now? It was here. When I'm doing that hammer on, it's ready to go to play that A string. So I'm prepping the next set while I'm doing that hammer on. My pick's ready to go to the A string. Here we go. Pick's already ready to go to the D string. So notice my pick where it is during that hammer on, down here on the G string, ready to go. So of course I'm not sitting on the string. I'm just hovering above it, ready to go to pick that string when I'm ready. So if you want to get comfortable with this sort of technique, you can, kind of similar to power up number 4, where I had suggested you do the shape with muted strings so you can really hear your timing. So you could just straight up go like this. I'm going pick, finger, finger, right? Pick, middle, ring. Over and over again. Now I have nails on this hand, so the notes sound a little bit louder and brighter, and they sound like they have more attack than if you had just normal flesh. But if you don't have nails, like, it's totally cool. You can do the same thing and work exactly the same. But I personally like the nails. I like the tone, so that's why I have them. You don't have to have them to do this, but it does help me at least a little bit. Another thing that I am doing when I'm picking and I'm preparing for this pattern, when I have my pick on the strings, I actually also have both fingers on the strings at the same time. So if I'm going for this pattern, right now I'm about to start the pattern. Let's say I'll do this one. Right? I have all three fingers on the, or 2 fingers and then the pick on their respective strings. So they're all ready to go. I'm primed and ready to play the whole shape. So pick, middle, it's hard to see from here. I'll kind of turn. You can see my hand already. Pick, middle, and ring are on their respective strings. So right when I'm doing this, pick, fingers are already ready to go, kind of set up like a spring loaded, and then I pick, and then I pick. That's how it will be for this entire thing. So watch this. There's the hammer on, next. You can see I'm prepping every time. Excuse me. Makes it way easier when you're prep. And also notice my hand is not flopping around. I'm not like, playing like this, jumping around as I'm using my fingers. My hand is staying in one spot. It's super important that your hand does not move with excess motion when you're doing this, especially when you're doing it at the top tempos. You really need to make sure your hand is sitting there ready to go to play that next shape. And all it takes is just sitting there doing it a whole bunch to kind of settle in your hand. Because if you've never done this before, your hand is going to want to move around a lot because it has no idea what it's doing. But the more you do it, your hand will start to realize like, oh, I think I know what's happening. My finger was moving like this, but I don't need to move like that. I just need to move like this. Your fingers and your hand will learn that. So you just have to do it a lot before it we'll start to settle into that. So in the beginning, you're going to think, I suck at this. I'm terrible. I don't want to do it. But that's just because your hands are not used to it. Once your hands are used to it, I'm telling you, it'll be super easy and it'll be a super valuable technique to have in your hands. So again, let me play this whole thing, play it slow. You can see exactly what's happening. So the first one, remember, we're starting here on that root. So we're moving up like this. Next one, next one, next one. And then we're ending with this note. That's going to be the beginning of the entire thing again. That's when we hit that and descend. So we're just, for this particular part, we're just stopping right there. You don't have to worry about continuing with the rest of the thing. That's what we're doing in the final part. So stay tuned for that. Again. Twice there. Then we move up 2 whole steps. Do it here. Everything is exactly the same. Right hand is exactly the same. Back a whole step. then back to the beginning, back a whole step. So also keep in mind that my right hand is verbatim doing the same thing every time I move strings. Pick, finger, finger, hammer on, pick, finger, finger, hammer on, pick, finger, finger, hammer on, pick, finger, finger, hammer on. It's exactly the same. So the right hand flows really well once you start getting comfortable with it. So hopefully all this stuff makes sense. This track, just like part 1, will move from 70 to 140 BPM. So let's get to it. All right, that does it for part 2. So we know the descending shape that used economy picking. Now we know the ascending shape that uses pick and fingers. All we have to do is combine them in the final part. Make sure that you're practicing these 2 particular sections back to back. You don't necessarily have to move them around like we've been doing. You can do them in one position for now, but in the final track, we will do the full thing, descending and then ascending, hitting all the different chords like we've been doing. So make sure you can do that seamlessly. Make sure the 2 techniques are happening comfortably. You don't have to think about it. You can almost close your eyes and meditate while you're doing it. This is where you want to be when you're executing these types of licks. So anyway, if you guys enjoyed this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and I'll see you in the final part.